guys, hopefully all of you are doing well today. Well, if you clicked on this video, you want to know how to cut a recipe in half. And whether you think you know it already or not, you know how to cut a recipe in half. A few videos ago, I asked you guys if you wanted to learn how to do it, and you said yes. So I definitely want to get this video up right now because of the fact that the holidays are coming, and some of you may not have as many guests as you think you're going to have, or maybe not as many guests as you had last year. Or it's not that many people in the house, so you want to cut some of the recipes down. You can definitely do that and save yourself some of the time and prep that it would take to make a full recipe. So why would we want to cut a recipe in half? Some of the reasons that I cut a recipe in half is, one, I don't want a full yield. I don't want 42 cookies that the recipe is actually going to yield. I only want 21, so I will cut each ingredient in half, and that way I can get half the recipe. Another reason why you would probably want to cut a recipe in half is because it's only 2 people that live in the house, maybe a couple or a mom and a small child, and a 2-pound meatloaf is just too much. So why not cut that recipe in half and get yourself a 1-pound meatloaf, and that way you don't have to worry about what you're going to do with all the leftovers. Now, leftovers isn't always a bad thing now. Let me put that out there. Leftovers is a good thing sometimes because you can take the leftovers, freeze them in portions, date them, and label them. Put them in your freezer, and you got future meals already stored up that you don't have to worry about, especially on those days that you don't want to cook. So keep that in mind. Another reason why I cut a recipe in half is because I am making somebody else's recipe, whether it's from a cookbook or a recipe that I found online, and I want to be nosy and I want to see what it tastes like and I want to see what the outcome is going to be. I will make a half a recipe. But what we're going to do today is go over 2 baking recipes. We're going to cut those in half. I think you guys pretty much are comfortable with, or at least you know that you can cut a savory recipe in half. You can cut greens in half. You can cut macaroni and cheese in half. Things like that. But a lot of us don't attempt at cutting a cake or a cookie or a baking recipe in half because we don't know how it's going to turn out. So I've tested some for you so that you can see what the outcome may be. I'm also going to give you a rule of thumb that you can use so that when you're doing stuff like this, you can keep an eye on the product in the oven or on top of the stove, whatever it is. That way you know that the timing may not be the same too. Okay? So let's go through first my lemon cream cheese pound cake. The ingredients for the lemon cream cheese pound cake are as follows. 3 to 4 fresh whole lemons, which will go down to 2 to 3 fresh whole lemons. The zest of 2 lemons, which will go down to the zest of 1. 1/4 cup of fresh squeezed lemon juice, which will go down to 2 tablespoons because 4 tablespoons is equal to 1/4 cup. So that's, again, 2 tablespoons of fresh squeezed lemon juice. 3 sticks of unsalted butter will go down to 1½ sticks or 3/4 cup. 8 ounces of cream cheese will go down to 4 ounces. 3 cups of granulated sugar will go down to 1½ cups. 6 eggs will go down to 3 eggs. 3 cups of cake flour will go down to 1½ cups. 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda will go down to 1/8 teaspoon. And a ½ teaspoon of salt will go down to 1/4 teaspoon. Now, you may not know all of the measurements by heart. You don't have to. You can download a metric conversion table off of the internet and print it and keep it in the kitchen at all times. So when you're doing this, you'll know how to break a recipe down or break an ingredient measurement down. Now, as far as the glaze, you can do 1 or 2 things when it comes to stuff like this. You can make the full recipe for the glaze, and you'll just have more glaze to go over half a cake, or you can also cut the ingredients down for the glaze on the cake. Remember, when you cut a recipe in half, all of the other prep directions and instructions still apply. That doesn't change. Just because you're dealing with less product doesn't mean that the instructions change. They don't. All right? So remember that. Follow all of the instructions. You're going to mix your sugar with your butter. Then you go in with the eggs and then the flavoring and so forth. You're going to still butter and flour the entire bundt pan as usual. Then you're going to go ahead and pour your batter into your bundt pan, and we're going to bake it. Now let's talk about timing before we bake it. Let's leave it on the counter, come back here, and let's talk about timing. Here's the rule of thumb that is going to help you when it comes down to baking or in general when you're cutting a recipe in half. Just because you're dealing with half a recipe, it doesn't mean that it's going to take half the time. That's key. So here's the rule of thumb that I put in place to help me stay in line, and hopefully it'll help you. So let's say a recipe is going to take 1 hour to cook. You're going to divide that in half, and you're going to have a benchmark of 30 minutes. Just because we need to be cautious of what we're doing and cooking in the oven or on top of the stove, we're going to shave even 10 more minutes off of that 30 minutes, and we're down to 20 minutes. That means for this cake, what I did was I came back to it within that time. So the full recipe for the lemon cream cheese pound cake takes about 1 hour and 20 minutes or so. I set my timer at half that time, so that would be about 40 minutes. What I did was I shaved 10 minutes off of that, and I was back at that cake in 30 minutes. All right? So I came back, I stuck a cake tester in there. The cake tester was still wet, so that meant the cake wasn't done. It was close, but not quite. Okay, at 30 minutes. So I let it cook some more, and wouldn't you know, the cake was done at the 50-minute mark. So because I set those benchmarks in place, I was able to come back to the cake, and I didn't burn it, I didn't overcook it, and it turned out perfect. So those are the rules that you need to remember when you're dealing with these baking recipes. Now let's go over the sweet cornbread recipe, and I picked this one to show you why things don't always work out like you think they're going to work out. Okay, so the ingredients for the sweet cornbread is 2 cups of all-purpose flour, which is going to go down to 1 cup. 2 cups of cornmeal, which is going to go down to 1 cup of cornmeal. 1.5 cups of granulated sugar goes down to 3/4 cup. 2 tablespoons of baking powder goes down to 1 tablespoon of baking powder. 1.5 teaspoons of salt goes down to 3/4 teaspoons of salt. 2.5 cups of buttermilk goes down to 1 1/4 cup of buttermilk. 1 cup of vegetable oil goes down to 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. 5 eggs goes down to 3 eggs, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then we have 3 tablespoons of butter, which goes down to 1.5 tablespoons of butter. Now, I picked this recipe for a couple of reasons. One is the eggs. It calls for 5 eggs. Now, divided in half, that gives us 2.5 eggs. But who's going to sit there and beat 1 egg and then divide half of it? Technically, you could, and you would just have, put some more eggs with it, have some scrambled eggs, whatever. But what you can do is go ahead and round up to the nearest egg and put 3 eggs in the recipe, and that's what I did in the example that I'm showing here for you today. That little half an egg, all it's going to do is give you a little bit more lift and a little bit more volume. So it's not going to hurt this recipe that much. And I've also done it with cakes. When cakes call for 5 eggs, I just use 3, and doesn't hurt it. It's fine. So I'm not going to put you through the stress and strain of dividing an egg in half. Just use 3 eggs and you'll be okay. Now what I did when I mixed the batter all up and I poured it, instead of using, because I have half the batter now, I didn't use a 9x13 like the recipe called for, the baking pan. What I used was like a 9x9, the half glass dish, baking dish. And I poured the batter in there. Now let's use the same rule of thumb by setting the time to half that time and then shaving 10 minutes off of that, coming back to it to see if it's ready or not. The cooking time for the cornbread is about 35 to 45 minutes depending on how brown you like your cornbread at the top. So I set my timer to come back to the product in 20 minutes. And then I shaved about 5 minutes off of that, so I was back at the product, checking it, with a toothpick in about 15 minutes, knowing that it probably wasn't going to be done in 15 minutes, but at least it would give me a benchmark to know whether it's going to be done in half the time, which is 20 to 25 minutes, or did I need the full time. I came back to it in 30 minutes, it was still jiggly in the middle, it was still wet. So that let me know that this particular baking product is going to need the full 35 to 45 minutes. So I hope I've helped you guys, because this can be done. You just need a couple of tricks and tips up your sleeve to know how to get through the recipe so you get the end result that you're supposed to get, and make sure your measurements are right. It's really not that hard. The other thing I want to address while I have you guys here is to make sure your ovens are calibrated. Now is the time to go ahead and get that done, because the holidays are fast approaching, and if you have to make a dish and take it, as part of a potluck, or if you're hosting the full dinner, you need to make sure that your oven is calibrated correctly. I've been reading some of you guys' comments, and you're saying that, oh, I put this in the oven and it burned. Well, it probably means that your oven is cooking too hot. Okay? And I discussed this in another video, and this is the second time I'm having to have this discussion with some of y'all, that your oven may be too hot, and so you need to calibrate it. I talked about calibrating your oven in another video. You want to get a hanging thermometer, hang it in the front of your oven, and close the door. Set your oven at 350 degrees, and then when it reaches temperature, go ahead and open your oven door and check that thermometer. If your thermometer reads 350 degrees, your oven is okay. But if you open up that door and your oven reads 375, that means your oven is cooking 25 degrees hotter than you think it is. That's why all your stuff is burning. So either get it looked at by a repair person, or just be aware that your oven cooks hot, and you're either going to turn your oven down to 325 knowing that it's going to cook at 350. That's a side way of doing things, but that's just making sure you're conscious of what you're doing. That way you're not burning up your baked goods, you're not burning up your dressing that you're going to be sticking in there, probably macaroni and cheese. Be conscious of what that oven is doing to the food that you're sticking in it, okay? And if you want to watch the video further on how to do that, I'm going to link that video in the description below. So I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, and you guys take care.